It is time for this morning's political breakfast. Georgia representatives are preparing to vote in Washington on President Donald Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Bill after it passed in the Senate. Trump is pressuring lawmakers, saying he wants to sign it by the July 4th holiday. That's tomorrow. Its sweeping tax cuts are estimated to add trillions more to the national debt. It also boosts spending on border security and defense and makes massive cuts to programs like Medicaid. Georgia Democrats and some Republicans here are concerned about provisions in this bill. Democratic strategist Tharon Johnson and Republican strategist Brian Robinson are here this morning to talk about it. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Lisa.
This sounds like it's imminent, and this vote is going to happen soon. So I'm just going to ask you both, what kind of pressure is the Georgia delegation under at this point? Brian, I'll begin with you.
Well, the only one who's been in question during any of this process has been Buddy Carter. And I say anyone on either side of the partisan divide. The Democrats have been firm no's, and for the most part, the Republicans have been firm yeses. Andrew Clyde held out in the first round because he wanted to add some gun policy changes. Those policies passed in the House, but then got taken out on the Senate side, making his support up in the air. But we are seeing reporting that overnight he did vote to let the bill move forward. So that suggests he's going to be a yes. I think there's some political implications here for Congressman Buddy Carter, who's running for U.S. Senate. Of course, he was the chair of the Health Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce. And so he has been tied to the policies having to do with these reductions in costs for Medicaid. Does that have implications for his U.S. Senate race? Will the healthcare community and the constituencies that receive Medicaid, would they speak up on this issue and engage? We don't quite know yet how this is all going to play out. But I can tell you this, we've heard the reporting on NPR just now from a great Georgian named Brendan Buck that this is going to be passed fairly soon today. As soon as it gets to the House, it'll be passed. If it's not going to be passed, it's not going to go to the floor. So we'll know fairly soon.
Yeah, if and when this passes, and it's likely that it will, Tharon, are Georgia Democrats going to be held responsible for any of this, especially when it comes to the Medicaid cuts?
No, because Georgia Democrats have been spending the last month and even 2 years, Lisa, where Republicans have been working to create this, what I like to call this bizarre bad bill. And to me, Georgia has the most to lose, which is why I think you see Congressman Buddy Carter really, really thinking long and hard about this vote. Georgia is in a very, very compromising place because if this bill were to pass, which is B-Rob said is pretty imminent because Donald Trump, as your report just showed, is all about getting a win. But it's breaking a promise that he made during the campaign. Let's not forget, to all our listeners, Donald Trump promised the American people, particularly our seniors, that he would not cut Medicaid. If this bill is passed in its current form here soon, it will make tremendous cuts to Medicaid. It also will basically take away roughly 800,000 people's health insurance through the Affordable Care Act. And the one issue that Brian and I are very passionate about is our rural hospitals. And this bill passes, it will take away $540 million of critical funding. Last thing I'll say is that we just had a crazy debate at the state capitol about insurance rates. This bill basically will raise the insurance rates on 310,000 Georgians. So, Lisa, this is a podcast that covers a lot of things across the nation, but I want Georgia voters to hear this is what the Republicans are doing for you. This was started off as an attempt to extend a tax credit for millionaires and billionaires. And guess what, Lisa? I've talked to a lot of millionaires. I only know one or two billionaires, but I've talked to a lot of millionaires. They say, hey, look, if this is going to give us a tax break and put a burden on hardworking families, which Donald Trump said was a key constituent in how he won his election, then they don't want it. They want to figure out how we can level the playing field. But this will put a tremendous tax burden on hardworking class Georgians.
Yeah, Brian, we just heard a report that a lot of Republicans want to pass this bill just to give President Trump a win. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, they also want to make sure that we don't get a massive tax increase. Now, this is not going to be cutting current rates that any of us pay right now. What would happen if this didn't pass was our tax rates would go back up to their previous pre-2017 levels. And that would be a pretty hefty hike. for working families. So when you're talking about these working families, one thing this bill does is make sure they're not paying higher income taxes. And so Republicans cannot stand by and let taxes go up. That is one of their biggest brands, is being for low taxes. And standing by as they have a trifecta in Washington, controlling House, Senate, and the White House, and letting a huge tax increase happen would be devastating for Republicans. So I don't think that there are Republicans who want to see spending cut even deeper, but they had to make sure the tax cut stayed in place.
Lisa, I'll say this bad, bizarre bill, if it passes, it's also going to slash these clean energy and manufacturing jobs that have come to Georgia. B. Rob and I, we go across the state. We talk to the Georgia Motor Truckers Association. We talk to the Georgia Manufacturing. We're going to talk to the Georgia Hospital Association. All these associations who are there to make sure that these jobs are available. This bizarre bad bill will take away a lot of these clean energy manufacturing jobs that Georgia has been thriving on. The last thing I'll say is this, Lisa, is that Donald Trump, again, promised us that he would not make cuts to Medicaid. The other thing that this bill doesn't do, it does not address our debt issue in this country. We have trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars in debt. And I want to remind our listeners, this bill only passed the Senate by one vote, is because the vice president was the tie-breaking vote. So shout out to our two U.S. senators, Raphael Warnock and John Ossoff, for really standing up and fighting for Georgia families.
Yeah, the governor can't be happy about the clean energy aspect as well, right? Because he fought hard here in Georgia for a lot of those tax incentives. So thanks, guys, for checking in.
Thank you, Lisa. Have a good day.
Happy 4th.
Happy 4th. Amplifying Atlanta, this is listener funded. WABE.